Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and today we're taking a look at the Exiles of Khorne, the Khorne-worshipping faction led by Skarbrand in Total War Warhammer 3. I'll be focusing on some of the key faction and lord-centered mechanics that you'll have on hand, and how you might want to use them to best effect. If you like what you see and want to grab the game for yourself, just a quick reminder that picking it up at the link in the description down below helps support the channel. As always, I'll have timestamps on this video so you can skip around and avoid any spoilers, though I do try to keep them to a minimum at all times. With all that said and done, let's start with a look at the opening cinematic and campaign map flyover.
Jagged rocks and rivers of fire. Here I found the greatest of all bloodthirsters. Bones of all that walked or crawled littered his lair. Skarbrand, rage incarnate. I had but a moment to make my case. The time it took to sharpen his murderous blades. The demon had spent millennia harvesting skulls to earn the forgiveness of his master, the Chaos God, Khorne. The skull of Ursun would gain his favor.
What do you know of Khorne's favor?
Nothing, mighty Skarbrand. I am but a servant, ready to aid your slaughter.
I can smell the magic on you, seer. I'll take your skull.
Why take mine when you can have the skull of a god? Let me guide you through the maelstrom to where Belagor imprisons the bear. Take his skull. All I want is a drop of Ursun's blood.
Keep your skull. Give me the bear. One skull for the throne. The rest are mine to collect.
Our goal is to take the head of the god bear. A worthy trophy for the skull throne.
Find me skulls, little man. Or yours is next.
At once, mighty Reaper. The whole region is awash with heads that will easily be parted from their necks. Here is your first prey, a mortal army wishing to catch the gaze of the blood god. Instead, they draw your attention. Slaughter the mortal insects that infest this region, and claim Bloodfire Falls as your own. Further afield, you'll find plenty more enemies to rip asunder. The forces of hated Slaanesh cower at the monolith. Or perhaps seek out more of Khorne's disciples. Not to ally with, of course, but to kill. For your father cares not from where the blood flows. In the south, you may encounter greenskins. Then there are the Norse. Mortals who will worship you if you let them, or introduce them to your twin axes. If you continue your trail of destruction south, then even richer lands shall be in reach. The fragile souls of Kislev and the Empire will fuel your rise to ultimate power. Only the spineless occupy such settlements. Followers of Khorne bring slaughter, razing everything until there is naught but blood-stained ruins. The more skulls you take, the easier it will be to enter the realm of chaos and seek the dying god. So, let the blood harvest begin.
The starting situation. For somebody who's trying to get back into his sorcerer-hating, skull-taking patron god's good graces, Skarbrand is probably off to a bad start here.
Keep your skull.
But the promise of Ursun's skull is hard to pass up. Situated in the far north, Skarbrand starts with the province capital of Infernius and an army that will very quickly and very indirectly balloon in size. Almost entirely armor-piercing and anti-infantry, none of your closest enemies should prove too much trouble unless you play slowly. Khorne isn't meant to be played slowly. Bloodfire Falls is easy to secure against the Warriors of Chaos faction that controls it, but you'll want to move quickly against the Slaaneshi faction Exquisite Pain before they move in on you. As you defeat these initial settlements, a combination of your main army led by Skarbrand and your blood hosts will allow you to very quickly take Blackrock and the Shifting Monolith, declaring war after war to do so, and it won't be long before you've eliminated Nikari. As you do all this, make sure you're not holding on to any settlement that isn't a provincial capital. You'll want to sack the rare settlement, but 99% of the time you'll be raising them to get blood hosts instead. Eventually, these raised settlements will get colonized in your name automatically. It takes a while for the first one, about 10 or so turns, but then it happens like every other turn very quickly, so just be patient and you'll pretty much never need to settle anything that isn't a provincial capital. To be clear, you want to make sure to capture at least one city in each province so that you'll automatically spread your control across these raised cities, but you don't have to actually colonize or capture or occupy any of the other cities. Just one, and the rest will automatically be occupied over time. Skarbrand moves very fast, since the faction has a plus 25% to movement range after raising a settlement, which again you'll be doing almost all the time, and Skarbrand's own army also gets a plus 35% to campaign movement range after winning a battle. To maintain momentum, I think having a strong economic backbone to power all the blood hosts is essential. I don't care for any of these units personally, so I'll usually demolish this building to get some money, while the second slot here is used for Khornate Tribute to help cause attrition, generate corruption and wealth, and if everything's timed right, give me higher level lords and heroes when it's time to recruit more. Eventually, this slot will be filled with higher level advanced military buildings, but I don't think you'll do too much recruiting anytime soon. If you desperately want a unit with staying power, you can build the armory to get the Chaos Warriors of Khorne, and this will let you recruit a cultist to help spread corruption too. Since this will likely stay as a bit of a recruitment hub for some time, I keep the portal line of settlement buildings as it reduces recruitment cost, reduces military building construction costs, and increases local recruitment cap. Unlike the Bastion, which focuses on cheapening infrastructure building construction costs and spreading corruption at this and adjacent provinces, while also significantly buffing growth rates every step of the way. Once your front has moved on, you can consider swapping over, and keep in mind that both of these lines for your provincial capital buildings are available across all provincial capitals, so economic hubs might go the Bastion route, while military hubs might go the portal route. Just as a heads up as well, your front will move very quickly, so you will be swapping this out eventually. Like I said, Skarbrand moves fast. Maximize blood hosts. Blood hosts are one of your key tools as Skarbrand, and if you can get a handle on how to use them at their best, you'll be a pretty unstoppable force. Blood hosts are armies that spawn after you raise a settlement. They spawn slightly outside the settlement that was just raised, and though they're stuck in place the turn they spawn, they will soon be able to move with a huge bump to campaign movement range. They have a reduced upkeep cost, but the units will never replenish, nor can they be swapped between armies or other blood hosts. They can, however, be merged to reduce upkeep costs even further, and if they're in complete ruin, you should really consider disbanding them. Though, disband them through a battle that they're guaranteed to lose, don't just disband them regularly. At least, through battle, even if it's a loss, you'll get some skulls. Blood hosts will start suffering attrition after a few turns have passed, and not even the encamp stance can overcome this attrition, but as you might imagine, they can be upgraded in a few ways. One of the few ways is available to you right off the bat, and offering 2,000 skulls to the Skull Throne will give you 10 turns of 2 extra units in any summoned blood hosts, which might not sound like much, but trust me, it adds up very quickly, especially early on. There are other benefits too, as you can see on screen, but we're talking about maximizing blood hosts now. 2,000 skulls is dirt cheap. It might sound like a lot, but you'll make it back in no time through battles, skull piles, missions, etc., and the 2 extra units will take you a lot further than you might think. Apart from that, there's the tech. Serial killing will help all characters, including blood hosts, move faster after raising a settlement. And yes, blood hosts can raise settlements to spawn more blood hosts too. Blood feasting reduces the upkeep cost of blood hosts, and while the 5% reduction again might seem measly, it does add up, and you need 3 techs per group before you can move on to the next group anyway. Failure in battle can reduce the amount of attrition blood hosts take. Pride to continue will delay the start of that attrition in the first place, while admiring the corrupt will add on an extra unit to the blood host on their creation, and Skull Reaper will buff blood hosts rather significantly, all things considered. Gates of Wrath is further along, but it guarantees a Bloodthirster in newly formed blood hosts, and even further down, Defiant Muster, Glorious Deaths, and Abjuration Reaper all buff blood hosts with 1 extra unit, an extra turn of delay to attrition, and a further buffed campaign movement speed respectively. There are of course other options along the way that apply other buffs that would help blood hosts out too. Weapon strength or melee stat buffs, army ability unlocks, etc. These all apply to blood host battles and units as well. Beyond tech, Skarbrand can eventually unlock his Locus of Endless War that adds another 3 units to blood hosts when they're created, but this applies to all characters across the faction, not just blood hosts that are born from Skarbrand's raising. Keep in mind that blood hosts can reinforce your main armies, and they can reinforce each other too. Keep in mind also that they can again raise settlements to summon new blood hosts of their own. Blood hosts are extremely powerful, especially when you chain blood host after blood host after blood host. You can very quickly have multiple decent armies that when they reinforce each other form a very formidable force. Do keep in mind though that Bloodletting applies to all your blood hosts just as it does to regular armies. Manage Bloodletting. Tracked through this bar next to your selected army leader's portrait, Bloodletting gives army-specific buffs to upkeep, growth across all provinces, casualty replenishment rate for all armies, Khorne corruption in the local province, and global recruitment duration reductions for the specific army. You'll notice that some of these buffs apply faction-wide, and that means that yes, if you have multiple armies at a level of Bloodletting that provides a faction-wide buff, those buffs will stack. Only the buff to growth has diminishing returns the higher up the Bloodletting ladder you go, but it's worth considering if, for example, you want to prioritize having 2 armies at level 2, which gives plus 45 growth apiece for a total of plus 90, or 1 army at level 3, which only gives plus 60 growth. Everything else grows in a pretty linear fashion as far as value is concerned, but corruption only starts to spread at level 2. The difference isn't the biggest deal, but when you start getting armies at the highest level, make sure to spread the love of killing, maiming, and burning around a little bit so that other armies can get to that highest level as well. An army at the highest level only needs to do battle to maintain the highest level. There is no higher to go. Meanwhile, an army at a lower level could use another battle or 2 to unlock the higher tier of benefits for themselves and the faction as a whole. Keep in mind though that going without battle for too long will result in the Bloodletting level dropping. Let it drop too low and you're going to start seeing negative effects, and the negative to growth will directly go against the buff to growth from a higher level of Bloodletting that a different army might be providing. So you want to avoid this lowest level at all costs. Remember that all armies involved in a battle will have the battle added to their tally for Bloodletting, whether they're the primary attacker or just a reinforcing army instead. Use this to your advantage with blood hosts, moving in groups to get them all to higher levels of Bloodletting together. And if Bloodletting is ever dropping and there's no battle nearby, don't forget to use your unholy manifestation, Eternal War, to target your own army with an immediate battle. Do keep in mind that these battles draw in reinforcements too, so you can help multiple armies up their Bloodletting tally all at once. And if you're particularly cheeky, you can even draw in an army that's sitting just out of reach, like I do here. It's a much more powerful tool than it appears to be, so don't underestimate its dirtier uses. Honestly, Nakari was constantly running away from me in this particular situation, but using Eternal War, I was able to engage my armies over here, force N'Kari into battle, defeat N'Kari, and also up my Bloodletting. It was an excellent feeling. Skills to kill with. While we touched on some earlier in this video, there are key considerations with the skill trees for Skarbrand and his heroes and other generals that can make quite a difference in your campaign. Naturally, everything's fair game if you have a specific plan for your characters, but consider making it a top priority to get to Skarbrand's Locus of Endless War and get that whopping 3 extra units added to any new blood hosts. Again, as a reminder, these 3 extra units are added to any new blood hosts from any source across the faction. Now, it'll require getting all of the skills before it, and since they're all single rank skills, this is a no-brainer of a skill line to pursue. Before you get this unlocked though, you'll want to chase Root Marcher and Blood Feast to make sure you're moving quickly and replenishing fast, especially since you replenish even in foreign territory. I like spreading Corruption as I go for the extra buffs that gives, but you might want Serve or Die instead, though I do think that time spent raiding as Skarbrand is a waste personally, so I'd avoid despoilers. Eventually, Sustained by Slaughter will make the army cheaper, and Claimer of Skulls helps in a few ways, including reduced upkeep, faster campaign movement, and better recruitment capacity and rank. Everything else is pretty fair game, though I'd suggest chasing the increased melee defense of Kill and the increased physical resistance of Slaughter on your way to the Bellow of Endless Fury that adds some ranged capabilities to Skarbrand with a magic missile. If you get the chance, make sure to send Skarbrand off on a faraway adventure at some point early on to get the Seasoned Campaigner trait and gain that extra boost to campaign movement range, among other things. Any Herald of Khorne you raise should have the same pursuit in the blue line, in my opinion, giving them that extra speed so they can hit as fast and as far as possible. The Blood Throne and the Juggernaut are both unlocked as mount options at level 9, and the Blood Throne adds a few extra abilities. Regeneration from Gore Feast is particularly helpful, and the buff to nearby allies is nothing to scoff at either, but you'll need to focus on buffing melee defense and physical resistance to make up for the massive drop in melee defense stats, and you'll want to buff melee attack up too. Melee defense and physical defense are the priority though, I would say, because there's no point in having all the melee attack in the world if you die in battle. Now, the Juggernaut is going to hit harder and defend itself better too, but it won't be able to regenerate any lost health or buff nearby allies. These same concepts apply to Blood Reapers, and I think all other skill picks are pretty open season. And don't underestimate the Cultist either. On a Chaos Steed and with a Gate of Khorne, they can very quickly deal hurt and summon units, and when you're looking at their stats, don't forget the effects of Frenzy. They're also great for spreading Corruption, and they can set a region up for conquest. On which note, let's discuss Creeping Corruption. Khornate Corruption gives buffs to Control, Melee Attack, and Charge bonus. The first as a flat number, the latter two as percentage buffs. At a high enough level, it starts reducing all other corruption types in a region and starts to cause attrition to armies that don't worship any of the Chaos Gods. As a Khornate faction, other types of corruption will reduce control in your regions and will reduce your own Khorne-specific corruption levels over time too, at higher levels. That non-Chaos Worshipper attrition is still helpful, but the other aspects are very much not. As a result, it's not a bad idea to push the spread of Chaos Corruption, and specifically Khornate Corruption, before your armies actually arrive. It's a pretty cool feeling to have your cultists act as harbingers of doom, giving your army buffs when they finally arrive, actively destroying non-Khornate armies in the region through attrition, and then helping maintain control when all is said and done. Getting corruption that high is not easy though. Cultists can bump corruption up slowly, certain commandments can help with adjacent territories, and the Bastion line of capital buildings can help spread corruption to adjacent provinces too. But if a province has another type of corruption high enough already, the -5 to your Khornate corruption spread will be very hard to overcome, and if there are high levels of multiple other types of corruption, it might be near impossible until you have higher level bastion buildings within that province. It gets really difficult, so you want to get there as early as possible if you're planning on getting there at all. Otherwise, there's not much point of preceding the worship of Khorne in a region. It's just almost impossible. Another benefit to high enough corruption is the cult. Popping up randomly in particularly corrupt areas As the Khorne player, you'll have control over what it does. There are a few options of buildings that can help you in various ways, and you can always demolish one and replace it with another. A great way to use these cults is to transport Skarbrand and his army to a new location to wreak havoc there. Pop a few blood hosts with a few raised cities in this new spot, and the party can truly begin, using the automatic capturing of settlements as discussed in the first section to spread your domain further and to spread your corruption further too. Keep in mind that while you can teleport Skarbrand to one of these cult locations, there's no way to teleport him back unless there's a rift nearby that you can use. So be wary not to overextend your reach and find yourself trapped far away as your home gets assaulted. But there it is, folks, a few key elements to consider when playing as Khorne, at least as Skarbrand. We'll see what changes when other legendary lords get added into the mix, but hopefully these give your campaigns a solid foundation to build off of. If you have any thoughts of your own or any questions about how Khorne plays, ask away in the comments down below, and I'll answer all I can. For more Total War and strategy gaming related content, news, reviews, previews, and more, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel. And as always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.